Hi, and welcome to A Mama Can Do It Sew Along. I'm Elizabeth, your host, and today is day 3 of our Adalynn Dress Sew Along. So if you missed day 1 and 2, on day 1 we worked on cutting our fabric pieces, and we also learned about fabric stretch, and we also did our fabric markings. So now, then on day 2, we did the neckline. And so today we are going to work on attaching sleeves. So as you can see, I've got my dress laid out face up. This is the wrong side. And the first thing that we're going to do is locate our fabric markings for our sleeve. So here, and I used my scissors, which we talked about in day 1, and the reason I do that is because simply when I'm cutting my fabric, I already have my scissors out, so it's easier for me than getting out a fabric marking pen. So here I have my front. You can see there's only one notch cut right here, and this is my back. This is 2 notches cut right here. You can also tell by simply looking at your neckline because the front scoops more than the back. So what we're going to do is grab our sleeves. I have one sleeve here, and we're going to just take a look at it and see where our fabric markings are. So here I have 2 notches right here. I have my seam notch, and I have my front notch. So for me to line this up, if I was to put it this way upside down, this would be incorrect because this is my front. So actually what we're going to do is put this over here on the top side, or on this side rather, because when I start lining it up, this one notch will line up with this one notch. So actually what I'm not going to go through and pin all the way around the sleeve, but I am going to pin my marks. So I have my center mark, which I'm going to put directly on the seam. I'll use one of my clips to do that. And we are putting the sleeve and the body piece right sides together too. And then I'm going to put this notch onto this notch, and I'll clip that into place. And then my double notch for the back side, I will put together and clip that into place. So then what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to start serging this with 3/8 inch of seam allowance. I'm going to start on this end and go all the way down to that end. Now the sleeve is a opposite shape as the armhole, so take your time, and this will be a gorgeous piece of work. So I've finished sewing the sleeves on, and as you can see, they are a perfect fit. After I sewed the sleeves on, I realized that I did not tell you to sew your hems on the ends of each sleeve, and so I went ahead and did that. It's simply folding it inward 1 inch and then sewing with a stretch stitch about 1/8 of an inch from this inside edge to hold that into place. Now this is going to be a really easy step. This is what takes it from a project into a garment. And now we're just going to grab a hold of our sleeves and lay our garment out just like this. Then I'm going to match up all of the edges, including the pockets, just like this. Keep the pockets outward so that we can make them line up really well. And then after we get it all lined up, we're going to clip it into place. Now, what we're going to do with the pockets, so you can see how this is my seam and it really wants to fold open, but when we sew this together, we want it to stay closed, because what we're going to do is we're going to start at the sleeve when we sew it, and we're going to come down to the armpit and then come down to here to the top of the pocket, and then go around the pocket, keeping this seam allowance pushed in toward the pocket, come back out, back onto the dress piece, and then down to the bottom. So it's really important that both, see this one wanted to fold back too, that both sides of the garment are all of the seam allowances, excuse me, are pushed toward the sleeve, just like that. It's actually easier if we press it into place like that, so that we can make sure that our seam allowances stay in the proper direction. So I am just going to, right now, because I'm not going to press it, I'm going to hold it into place when I'm sewing it. I'm just going to start clipping things, and when I clip it, I always like to put a clip right here in the corner, so that way when I come down this way, I remember to push this down, just like that. Now, something else I want to mention is when we go to sew this together, even though I'm going to be using my serger, I am actually going to sew it together with my sewing machine. And the reason why is because I like to use the cutter on my sewing machine. And what happens is when we come down and around here, if this is not already sewed together, things start to get wonky. So make sure that you use your sewing machine first, and then what we'll do is we will go back over this edge with our serger to seal in all of the raw edges. When we sew with our sewing machine, make sure that you use a stretchable stitch, so that way the seams won't pop on your subject, or the wearer rather. I'm going to finish putting this together, and then I'm going to sew it together, and then I'm going to serge it, and I will come back and show you what it'll look like. Okay, so I got done sewing the edges and going around between the wrist until the hem of the garment, and I just wanted to show you this before I serged it. So this is a really great reason to snip your fabric markings. Instead, see, this one is perfect, instead of drawing on them, because it just takes an extra step out of it. So because I did not mark my fabric and instead I snipped it, what this did was it created a perfect location for me to attach my pocket. But then when I went around my pocket, it also made a stretch point for it. So if you by chance did not clip your pocket markings, at this point I would really recommend taking your scissors and just snipping in this corner a little bit so that there is some give for your pocket. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the edges, and I'm going to serge and probably cut off 1/8 of an inch of my seam allowance. When I get to my pockets, I'm actually going to open it like this, so as it's going through the serger, I'll make it straight like this. And then when I get down to this side, I'll do the same thing by making it straight. And so this way we'll be able to run it through the serging machine without missing any of the fabric. Okay, I'll go do that right now. So here I have serged the edges where I had previously sewn it together, from the sleeve all the way down to the hem. Oh, that's around the pocket and down to the hem. Looks beautiful. At this point, I think that it is perfectly okay to try it on your subject. Make sure that you love it, love it, love it. And then if you had to maybe add some length with a ruffle, or if you wanted to cut off some length if you felt like it was too long, this would be the perfect opportunity to do that. So what I have found is that the easiest way to do a hem of a curved dress line like this is to use a lot of clips or pins. So I've got my basket of clips, and I am just going to start clipping it. So what we'll do while it's inside out, I'm going to just fold it up 1 inch, and I pretty much just eyeball the inch. Another thing that you could do if you wanted, you could also serge this edge prior to folding it. I am not going to do that today. And so then probably about every 2 inches, I am going to clip my hem into place where I want it to be. Alright, so now that I have everything clipped for my hem here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing on one of the seams on the edges, and I'm going to, or on the seam over here on the side, and then what I'm going to do is with a stretchable stitch I'm going to start sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from the inside edge of my hem, and I'm just going to sew all the way around the entire thing. When I do that, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to use a stretch stitch. It's very, very important that you use a stretchable stitch. So I'm going to go and do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have sewn my hem into place, as you can see, and I sewed about 1/8 of an inch from this inner edge with a stretchable stitch. As you can see, it's really stretchy. And I went all the way around the entire dress. So now it's time to finally turn it right side out and look at it. Oh, look at that. That is beautiful. So I'm going to go try it on my baby, and I will show you how gorgeous it is in person on her.